The Dallas Mavericks have made history last season as they put up the most efficient offense in NBA history, but despite all of that, their defense was below the league average by statistical and stylistic categories as they were only ranked as the 18th best defense in the NBA. Well, all their shortcomings on that end of the floor were fully exposed in the Clippers series as Kawhi Leonard, Paul George and company dropped 50, 40 and 81% shooting splits against them. Of course, these numbers were inflated by the absence of Kristaps Porzingis for most of the series, but I still think there's more to their first round exit than just missing their second best player. Because although you can't deny that Porzingis would have added spacing and rim protection for them, it's really gonna be hard for Dallas to win against an elite offensive team when you're allowing Kawhi to shoot 54% against your team and when your best bet to defend him is someone like Maxi Kleber. But this early in the season, the Mavs are suddenly looking much better as they're currently the 7th best defensive team in the league. But what exactly changed for them? Most likely, the Mavs started to understand that to get over the hump and make a bigger push come play of time, they had to find the right balance between offense and defense. And you may credit their good offseason, which saw them adding lengthy defenders like Josh Richardson, James Johnson or Wesley Iwundu. But believe it or not, a lot of their improvements in the defensive end has got to do with Luka Doncic's defense itself. So what's good guys, it's Rero Balls here, and in this video, we'll take a look at the Mavericks' newly found defensive identity and how it could help them become real contenders. And we'll dive deeper into how Luka Doncic is turning into a scary two-way presence for Dallas, and why it's totally wrong to call him a one-dimensional player at this point. But before we move on, it would be great if you guys can hit that like button right now because it helps the channel to grow for me to be able to put out more NBA content moving forward. So let's get to it. Before the start of the 2020 to 2021 season, Coach Rick Carlisle already had his priorities straight as in the preseason press conference, he said, quote-unquote, "When you establish that you're a galactically successful team but below average defensively, that's not going to win you a championship." And as the Mavs finally addressed their glaring needs this offseason, it's safe to say that we're already witnessing the early rewards caused by the team's choice to prioritize defense. But how are the Mavs exactly taking a big leap defensively? Well, to put it into context, let's first look into another team who's having the most improvements in defense from last season, which is the Cleveland Cavaliers. Well, last season, the Cavs ranked dead last in the league in terms of defensive efficiency, but so far this season, they're looking like borderline playoff contenders as they're currently the 3rd best defensive team in the league. Well, the thing is, this team isn't just forcing opponents to take bad shots, but instead, it looks like their goal has been to prevent any shots at all. As currently, the Cavs are forcing turnovers at the league best 20% of the time for their opponents' entire possessions. Basically, you can point to guys like Larry Nance and Andre Drummond as being responsible for this, as currently, Larry Nance is leading the league in steals at 2.5 per game, while Drummond also ranks 10th in the league in that same category, while also continuing to average more than 1 block per game. Well, most definitely, the Mavs aren't the best team in the league in terms of forcing turnovers. Dallas only ranks 16th in steals per game, so basically, it's safe to say that they aren't taking the route that the Cavs are taking on the defensive end. But just as you can identify Larry Nance and Andre Drummond as the main anchors for Cleveland's sudden defensive emergence, there's one player who you can credit with all of the Mavs' improvements on that end as well, and he's no other than Luka Doncic himself. Well, entering the season, as sound as Doncic is on offense, if you're a Mavs fan, you definitely still want him to improve his 3-point shooting and his free throw shooting percentages, but so far, his outside shooting has even got worse from last season, while his free throw shooting is still virtually the same at 75%. But what's really surprising, I guess, is how Luka's defense has been that one aspect of his game that has taken a big leap so far. And I think to say that his defense has improved is a big understatement. Well, for sure, on the surface, there's nothing crazy about the defensive numbers he's putting up so far. His 1 steal per game, 0.8 blocks per game, and 8.8 defensive rebounds per game isn't really that special if you look at it. But if you put these numbers into context, it's when it gets really interesting. Because if you look at it, last season in 61 games that he played, Doncic only put up a total of 14 blocks for the entire season, but so far, after 13 games that he's played, the guy's already put up a total of 10 blocks, which means he just needs 4 more blocks to equal his total output from last season. And also, his 1 steal per game isn't really really eye-popping at first glance and is the same as his last year's average. But it's worth remembering that in the Mavs' overtime win against Denver earlier this season, Luka recorded 5 steals, which is also a career high for him. Plus, even his defensive rebounding percentage has been up so far, and if any, Luka has shown that he's playing bigger than his size as he's been leading all point guards in that category ahead of Russell Westbrook. Basically, he's been able to grab defensive boards at the rate that guys like Jarrett Allen, Yusuf Nurkic, and Tristan Thompson have been grabbing rebounds. But despite all these improvements with Luka's individual defense, you may still be skeptical and you might be thinking if such numbers really impact Dallas as a team. Well, the answer to that is a big yes, because currently, Doncic also ranks 12th in the entire NBA in defensive box plus minus, and it's worth noting that all 11 guys who are ranked ahead of him in this category are all listed as centers or power forwards, with the exception of Ben Simmons, who's still a big point guard at 6'10". And also, Doncic currently ranks 11th in the entire NBA in defensive win shares, ahead of guys like Giannis, Marc Gasol, and Nikola Jokic. And to put that into context, during the 2019 to 2020 season, Luka only ranked 41st in terms of defensive box plus minus and only 44th in defensive win shares. So just as the numbers suggest, this guy's drastically improved his defense, and it's safe to say that he's taking his game to a whole nother level so far. And it's pretty obvious that Luka's great two-way play has been a huge factor for the wins that Dallas have had this season. But the truth is, statistics still might not be enough to gauge the impact of a defender. Therefore, it's still better to judge Luka's defensive impact with a naked eye test. And even with that, it's not hard to see that so far, the guy has improved in terms of anticipating opponents' passes. Luka just seems to get a better read of the passing lane so far as compared to last season. And well, if you remember, Doncic has been criticized for being quite bulky and out of shape during the preseason. But believe it or not, the extra weight that the guy has put up looks like it has been helping him hold his ground as a defender, because so far, he just looks much stronger when defending post-ups, while he's also being more effective in terms of slowing down opponents driving to the rim. Well, prior to entering the NBA, you've also probably heard the criticisms about Luka's athleticism and about how he's not quick enough to guard guys in the NBA. Well, that could have been true during his first couple seasons, but so far, Luka belongs to the 95th percentile of all isolation defenders in the entire league, with Larry Nance and Pascal Siakam being the only two guys who have been better one-on-one defenders so far. Well, you can look back into the Mavs game against the Charlotte Hornets to have a full understanding of this, as during the 5 minutes of game time that Luka spent on guarding Gordon Hayward, Luka was able to block him twice while limiting him to 3 out of 8 shooting. Well, of course, that's a very tiny sample size, but considering that Hayward is Charlotte's best offensive player who has also looked automatic from almost anywhere on the floor this season, it looks like Luka is definitely showing flashes of being able to guard the opposing team's best player. But of course, at this point, I think Luka is still better off as a help defender. If you're a Mavs fan, you don't want to waste this guy's energy and defense for the majority of his time on the floor, and besides, that's where you'll need to see the value of those other guys in the roster. And speaking of defensive value, I think this is where we're going to see what a guy like Josh Richardson brings. And for sure, people should get over with the Seth Curry trade already, to be honest. Well, yeah, Seth Curry is shooting almost 60% from 3 right now for the Sixers, but would that be sustainable for the whole season? It wouldn't be for sure. He'll most likely crash to around 45% moving forward. Well, yeah, he could have stayed in Dallas and they could still have been the league's most terrifying offense, but at this point, you just can't rely on a 6'2" guard with a 6'4" wingspan to play extended minutes as Luka's backcourt partner. Overall, I think Richardson is still the better fit next to Luka defensively, at least with his 6'6" frame and 7' wingspan. Currently, the guy is only shooting 32% from downtown, but as of the making of this video, he still hasn't been able to share the floor with Porzingis, but I believe his true value will show once he gets more open looks when he's put in the court at the same time as Doncic and Porzingis. But if you want to understand how Dallas could further improve defensively, I think we need to take a look at the 2019 to 2020 Milwaukee Bucks, which has been one of the best defensive teams in recent memory. Last season, the Bucks were the best team in the NBA in terms of allowing shots near the rim, as opponents only shot 29% within 5 feet of the basket. But at the same time, they were also the 3rd worst team in terms of defending the 3-point line. And despite that, Giannis and company were still able to lead the league in defensive efficiency. And so I think the basic takeaway with that is, in today's NBA, it's very hard to be great at defending both the paint and the perimeter at the same time. Basically, this means that teams have to sacrifice at least one area in terms of focusing on defense. While so far, Dallas has been the opposite of last year's Milwaukee team. Dallas is currently the 2nd best team in defending the 3-point line, but they are also the 2nd worst team in terms of allowing shots at the rim. Before the return of Porzingis, the Mavs were allowing opponents to shoot 71% of their shots at the rim. Well, they haven't been significantly better with him back on the floor, as they are still allowing their opponents to shoot 67% in that area. But if you look at it, Porzingis hasn't even played 10 games yet, and so far, during the 4 games that he's played, he's already recorded 9 blocks, resulting in 1.8 blocks per game while still being the same offensive nightmare for opponents. And considering that Porzingis has been a great rim protector historically, I think that things are just bound to get better for Dallas defensively moving forward. Last season, KP posted the 12th highest point differential on defense in the entire NBA, as opponents shot 11% worse whenever they shared the floor with him. And besides, Porzingis is only 25, and historically, big men usually reach their peaks defensively around age 28 to 30. So it's safe to say that there's still a lot of time for him to get much better, provided he remains healthy. And as of the making of this video, he hasn't even shared a single minute on the floor with the Mavs' other great defenders in Josh Richardson and Dorian Finney-Smith. And so, I believe we'll only truly see how this team operates in defense once both Luka and KP share the floor with a fully healthy roster. And so far, the Mavs' other pieces have been great. James Johnson currently ranks 2nd in the NBA in defensive box plus minus, only behind Nikola Jokic, as he's averaging 1.2 steals per game. And barring any injury, Willie Cauley-Stein is also primed to have the best shot blocking season of his career. But the truth is, it's still very early in the season, and while Doncic and Porzingis are still looking like their usual selves offensively, both guys are still struggling to be consistent, at least from the 3-point line. But if there's anything to be excited about for Mavs fans right now, it's that Luka is evolving into a very reliable two-way superstar right before our very eyes, and that should be very terrifying for the rest of the league, to say at least, considering that Luka is only in his 3rd season. And if Doncic maintains this kind of two-way excellence throughout the year, it's pretty logical to say that things will just get better for Dallas. And by things getting better, I mean finding the right balance between being offensively great and being defensively sound, because historically, a team which ranks in the top 10 in both offense and defense should be considered instant championship contenders. The Mavs aren't there yet, but towards the end of the season, they might be very, very close. Thank you for sticking until the end of the video, and as always, feel free to drop your thoughts in the comment section below, and please do hit the subscribe button if you are new to this channel. Again, this is Rero Balls, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace!